Hello everyone. Today's focus. Quite an interesting one so far. A quarter of the way through. Couple of ideas for today. One being that if I can try to draw a connection between where I am now and what I'm reading about, I will try to do that. I'm sitting here on an island which was man-made as part of the creation of the intercoastal waterway on the east coast of the United States, which is a man-made canal that runs just over 3,000 miles all along the east coast. And it was created beginning, I think, somewhere around the 30s. Maybe even earlier than that. I know that it was used in World War I and World War II for the purpose of protection, vessel protection from enemy attacks. Basically, imagine the east coast with a shelf detached that runs along the whole coast, which boats are able to use going north and south, and projectiles, underwater projectiles, are blocked. So U-boats that were approaching the coast and attacking naval ships are now unable to do that, unless they were to somehow enter the ICW. Also, in regard to commerce, the good old business world, it serves as protection. I guess realistically, in a sense, serves as protection from pirates. It serves to protect vessels, both commercial and recreational, from weather, from rough seas, because there's the island which buffers. But here I am today, sitting on one of those islands, one of those pieces of strip that skirts the outer edge of the east coast of the United States. And it's funny how, well, during wartime, I can imagine that no one would want to inhabit this spot because it's the closest piece of land possible to an enemy that may be approaching from that side, at least. But here I sit today in 2025, and as far up and down the coast on this strip of islands that I can think of, it is a place where the wealthy individuals who can afford the highest priced real estate choose to reside. It's just interesting. But I think about it often because, well, I do not closely follow the news. The news presents itself to us via each other. Go stand in public and you will hear some story about what's going on in the world. There's no fully avoiding it. So while I don't pay full attention to the news, it's clear that, at least for the span of my life so far, war is always a topic in the news. It's something that's always going on, if not in the foreground of life, in the background of life. it's always going on also. I guess it is going on in the foreground, within each and every one of us in some sense. And this is an assumption I'm making, so I can be wrong. This may not apply to you, but to me, the war that I deal with is the war between the head and the heart. The war between desire and satisfaction. I was once spoken to about how even sexual encounters could be seen as fighting or war, which I can't say that I had ever considered it in that way, but I guess it's possible. This is a special birthday edition for me. I am one year shy of 30 today, according to the Gregorian calendar. And it's very exciting. I woke up feeling well rested after quite a vivid, odd, adventurous natured dream, including many family members, some old teachers. I was being operated on. It's interesting. It's interesting how I seem to notice that when I'm closer to where it is that I want to be consciously, I seem to dream more often, and I seem to be able to remember the dreams. So it's definitely it's been an interesting day so far. Woke up, made myself a nice breakfast, which I'm not used to doing often. And then I went to the coffee shop and got myself a birthday tea. And I sat around for a while and I wrote some poems. While I was making breakfast, I listened to the new album released, which Mac Miller wrote. He died at age 26, and his estate just released an album that he had completed sometime around 2014, I think, called Balloonerism. And I will say it's odd to listen to a piece of art, a piece of music which was created when someone who is currently dead was alive in the past. And what I noticed about this album from the very beginning is that it was very somber in tone, but at the same time, the music was very explorative and trying to figure out words to describe it. Very free feeling. But there was a lot of sadness in the words. it seemed to me that when he wrote this album, he had a generally pretty clear view of his own life, at least. And what I have come to love so much about him is that he says it how it is. He doesn't beat around the bush. And I wrote a little tribute poem to him, and posted it to my Substack. And in the poem, I noted how the you would call it a Jungian nature of him came out in that album. And by Jungian nature, I mean that he includes the parts of himself, or included the parts of himself in his music and his art that he acknowledges there because he experienced, but that are otherwise taboo or considered ugly by the, agreed upon society that we live in, by the ideologies that run the show that we're all a part of. And I corresponded a little bit with my aunt, who has always been a big fan of his. And she told me she was on her second playthrough when I responded to her. And I said that I was loving it. And she responded and said that it was making her sad. And I started to consider why. And I mean, I noticed that a lot of what I was hearing was sad. But it was real. As if sadness is what is required now by where we have arrived. It's just interesting to think about. And as I was cooking my food, listening to it, I'm just hearing in my head, I can relate to that, or I see that every day. Pretty much anything that was said. It's observable. And I think that's why artists like Mac Miller were so vastly loved by the population, by all sorts of people. And I think that's why Mac Miller attracted so many collaborators. I think also of the Gorillaz. The Gorillaz, they collaborate with many, many, many other artists. And I think that comes with the ability to present what it is that you observe in an authentic way, in a way where you're not really leaving anything out, where people can listen to what you're saying or see what you're sharing, and they can say to themselves, wow, I don't have the courage to say that. I don't have the courage to admit that to myself, let alone other people. But here is so-and-so doing it to the world. And I think it's so cool. A couple of other cool connections I want to mention. My good friend recommended to me a book by Rick Rubin, Rooted in the Nature of Creativity, called The Creative Act. And it's funny because before he was recommended to me, I had never heard of him. I didn't know who Rick Rubin was. I still don't know very much so what he has done, but I find myself listening to this album by Mac Miller and see that one of the final songs on the album features Rick Rubin, and it's called Rick's Piano. And it started with almost a Randy Newman-esque kind of comedy skit at the beginning. Just that, in a sense of that goofy sound, which Randy is so well known for. But I guess that what I'm trying to say is all of these things are connecting together, and it's pretty cool. Hello. If this were me 5 years ago, and I were listening to this album, but if I did not have the past 5 years of experience in my life to listen to it through, I'm pretty sure that today would have been a sad, sad day for me. But it's funny how it works out that way, because I don't feel sad today. Not wholly. I've experienced sadness. You experience it in acknowledgement of the truth, which truth always seems to hurt. Truth is rough. Truth is bare. Truth includes the whole picture, at least the whole of what we're able to see as human beings. Because I guess as a human, what I would consider to be non-truth is basically an incomplete picture of what it is that we are able to see. I cannot say that I understand why I'm alive. I cannot say that I know, where I come from. But I can say that I observe in my experience everything that's apparent. I observe what I perceive. And I can tell from communication and from consuming other people's art that perception amongst us all is largely shared. And it makes sense. But I sit here feeling very grateful and whole and excited, which admittedly includes some worry, some lack of confidence in the path that I'm on. But I guess I would say that beyond all of those small questionings, those doubts, lies a feeling of destiny, which in the first quarter of this book is described as oftentimes smothering and constricting, scary, which in my understanding of destiny is shared. But I guess what I would say is that to me, excitement is usually both scary and intriguing. I think of people who go to skydive or cliff jump. Obviously it's very, very scary to jump out of an airplane, regardless of how safe, how much faith you have in the technology. But people do it for fun. People pay to do it. So I guess in the same sense, destiny to me, is paid for by time. And it's scary. It's very scary. But it's also very exciting, and it's thrilling. But yes, if you're interested in reading the tribute poem to math that I wrote, it's on my Substack, and I will include the link to that. Otherwise, I just want to say that I'm grateful to be here, to be able to share this moment with you, and I hope that you can relate to something that I say.
You don't warn ahead of time, or you're just like, let's go.
Yeah, come back to my place. Like, does he just shit in public and then pick it up? Oh my god. I don't know, I have so many questions about this.
You might have a toilet in there that you tank me up like an RV to
Okay.
So, this book, written by an American author, Thomas Pynchon. I don't know much about him. I chose this book because I've heard that it's challenging. And challenging reads, when I read something and I have a hard time grasping it, it's always kind of fun when you get something out of it. It's unexpected. And it's also cool when various parts of the whole tie together at later points. But Thomas Pynchon was an American who was born, I think, in the early 30s, and he worked for Boeing for a bit. He was a technical writer, which shows in his in the prose that he put out there. But this book is broken up into 4 different sections, and in many ways it feels like it's written in code, and I guess that's what's exciting to me about reading, is that reading is all encoded lessons, stories, I don't know, it's magical. But I'm about a quarter of the way through, and while it is confusing, there are some guides online that people have created to, I guess, encourage palatability. But so far, the theme that I get from this book is the inevitability of war and the existence of war, and how war serves an evolutionary purpose in human history. Another idea is how history is almost used as a tactic, which I think if you're observant, you can see how that's definitely happened before and is happening all the time. Because think about it this way. While everything might be reported these days, you can find an explanation or a description of everything that happens. But you must ask yourself, from which perception was this reported, and how accurate might it actually be? Was it potentially done with the influence of profit? Probably. sexuality is a big theme in this one. What else? Similarly to the Jungian themes in Mac Miller's new album, this book also shares Jungian characteristics. Hello. In the sense that Pynchon is clearly fearless when it comes to including the quote-unquote ugly side of humanity. As I said when describing Mac's work, the side of him that society tells us not to be open about, not to be vocal about. So, I will say, in reading the first 100 pages or so of this book, I'm thinking to myself, wow, this is very graphic. This is very sexually graphic, very vivid in a sense of paranoia. But as I read on, I think to myself that it seems very I don't know if illuminative is a word, but it seems for the purpose of illumination. It seems for the purpose of acknowledgement of what is there, but what is not spoken about openly. And I think I remember seeing something about how this book was banned at one point. I don't know where it was banned, for what purpose it was banned, and for how long. But I also know that this book won an American Literature Award. An award for American literature. The William Dean Howells Award of the American Academy of Arts in letters for the best novel of the decade for Gravity's Rainbow. So it makes you wonder, how could something that contains such graphic, disgusting language achieve such an award? And I will tell you that my guess is partially due to the intricacy of the language used, the way he strings together words. His syntax alone is just kind of mind-blowing. We're living in the age of AI, and I'm thinking to myself, like, when this was written, no one wanted AI because they realized that it's possible without it. People realized, or I guess people didn't know yet, but sitting where I am now, looking back, there are certain things which are made available to us which I don't think help us to adopt. I guess that's how I would put it. Regardless of how appealing the ease of use and the I don't know, enriching appeal these things may have. But one challenge I'm having in speaking to the camera, it's kind of new to me. I'm usually speaking to another person directly, so bear with me. But one of the issues I have is, rounding out a point. So I guess the main point I'm trying to make with this book so far, and I'm only a quarter of the way through, is that it is a very all-encompassing, kind of reality check type of read, and it's one where, I find myself after spending an hour or two reading it, kind of feeling a little sick, and I think it is because or I mean, for me, I don't think, I know that it's because the things which are described in it are things that a part of me doesn't want to admit, and a part of me is straying away from. And this stuff all ties into my journey as someone who deals with addictive behavior, getting a grasp on, the price of everything that I choose. And a really, really intricate way that this happens is a price is paid by avoidance. And a price is paid by a refusal to acknowledge. And I think this is how human beings work. I can only truly speak for myself, but I don't know, and what I see around me, what I see in myself, it's truthful. And I guess although I can only speak for myself, what I see in myself is always what I see in others. And it is weird and magical and alchemical and creepy how that works, but it does work. And stuff like this reminds me to thank those that I view as my enemy. It reminds me to, and maybe not directly to their face, because as you can imagine, approaching someone and saying, thank you for, in whatever way you put it, thank you for being my enemy. They're not going to take that seriously. They're going to read that in a facetious way. And I guess to me, it's something that only needs to happen within. It's something that I just have to acknowledge after the fact. It's not so important for me to address them in that sense. But I sit here at 29, realizing that whenever I have a bad day, or what I see as a bad day, there's so much opportunity in that. And I don't know how much time I have, ever. Nothing in this life is guaranteed, I guess, except for change. So, with all that being said, I look forward to continuing this wild, wild book, and maybe I'll report back a little bit on some of the content that I get through today. And I mean, look at this weather in this beautiful day. I hope that you enjoy. And a point to add, more to the technicalities, I have a microphone coming. I've decided to invest a little bit into this. So a microphone coming with a wind buffer, so that in the case when I'm outside and it's really windy, you can hear me. So yeah, coming soon.
so confused. I was like, this accident must be terrible.
I think Callie's gonna want to go get
8 years old. They moved here in town.
Good old Tom. He is very, very good at painting a picture, setting the scene, illustrating these little anecdotes where, if you allow your imagination to activate, you can just picture it happening. And I'm sure it looks different for everyone, but it's very, very funny. There's a lot of just totally outlandish, wacky occurrences in this book. I don't know, it's like a cartoon playing in my head. I saw some funny quote sort of thing that said, reading is truly wacky and wild when you think about it. You're looking at symbols printed out onto a flattened tree, which make you vividly hallucinate. Isn't that wild? Because you're using your vision, one of your 5 senses, to view the symbols, yet you're still seeing a different picture playing in your head. Or where are you seeing it play? These are the sorts of things that I love to think about. So a couple of other themes that kind of resurfaced as I was reading. Basically, a lot of metaphors, and I think the story is very allegorical. But the metaphor for the rocket as a phallic symbol, there's a lot of that at the core of all of the story. Tying back to the sexual kind of sexually explicit sections, and then also another theme is the going back and forth between various characters who think of things differently, and they have different theories. And what's funny, and I guess true about life, is that, well, they're going back and forth amongst all of these theories. No one really knows who's more accurate, who's right, if they're all right, if none of them are right. And I think that's where a lot of the paranoia in this book comes from. They're all wondering. It's pretty cool. It's the sort of thing that if you let it be very scary, it can be. But I guess if you allow it to just be wonder, even in the face of violence and, you know, whatever else may scare us, it can still be wondrous and intriguing. Yeah, I mean, something I'm really enjoying about this book is the, like, cartoonish, outlandish, illustrative way that Pynchon wrote out the scenes. And I think this was his third book, maybe even later. I know his first book was titled V, and this one was written about the V2 rockets, and V were the first iteration of the rockets. So I guess I went for this one first because it was on the list of challenging books to read. But having so far enjoyed this, I think that I'm going to, at some point, go back and read more of his work. It's wild how humorous something like this can be, and it's also so freakish and scary. Anyways, that's about it for today. Honorable mention to Kaveh Akbar for Martyr, which I ended up finishing a couple days after the last video. And yeah, it ended up being one of my favorite novels to date. I mentioned it to my good friend at a meeting, and he said that it just happened to be his favorite author. And he has a collection of Akbar's poetry that he said he's going to share with me, so I'm excited. And then I'm going to lend it to my other good friend, who I think will also very much enjoy it. But until next time, enjoy, and don't forget to remember that this is it, right here, right now.